So it looks like Canadians are looking for a lot of retirement advice here. Basically, this video has almost got 100,000 views in the last couple weeks, and basically he's showing you a software you can't buy. Here's a software that's so user-friendly that you can take care of your retirement yourself, and it's only a one-time fee. I used the software in the past that he's showing you. It's called Conquest. I used to pay about $50 a month for this, and basically this calculator does all the work. I used to use it before Conquest because my AI I found was quicker and better than Conquest. Alright, so let's watch this video, and I'm going to walk you through my retirement planning software while he's showing you his. And basically you can decide, which one you like better and which one's a lot more affordable. Probably just using RetireCan instead of a financial advisor is in your best interest. Anyone can do it. Alright, so let's see what he has to say.
My name is Reese. I'm the founder of Well Built Wealth, and we pretty much eat retirement plans for breakfast. We see people retiring with more than $1 million, and we see people retiring with less than $1 million. It's really quite doable either way. But today's video is all about what it looks like to retire with $1 million on the button. Today we're going to take a look at this through the lens of a test couple named Joey and Zoe Gamoe. For the record, originally I made up that last name, but then I Googled it just to check and see if it was actually a real name, and indeed, it is. Now, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of it, but I like it when names rhyme, so anyway, as you guessed it, Joey and Zoe have $1 million squirreled away, and they want to retire ASAP. End of this year, in fact. And so they want to know what they can get away with. And so what we're going to do to start things off is we're going to set the table with the basics of their situation and our base assumptions so that you can get a really clear idea of what we're doing here. And then we're going to jump into our ridiculously awesome software and play around with a bunch of different options for them. But a quick note first, these assumptions that we're using are not the holy grail. We're not married to these. We just have to pick something reasonable to work with because obviously there's a gazillion different variations that we could use, but we don't want to be here all month long going through each one of them. And also, to save time, what we want to do with this situation today is keep it realistic but simple so that we don't drown in minutia. But obviously, whenever we're doing plans for actual clients, we customize. And we do whatever it is that makes sense for them. Anyway, here's the basic situation for Joey and Zoe. They're both 64 and retiring at the beginning of next year. They're both healthy, so their life expectancy is going to be set at age 90. Now, I understand that life expectancy in Canada is a little lower than age 90, but it's pretty standard in our industry to just pick 90 to be a bit conservative. But of course, if you're doing your own plan, you can pick and plan until whatever age you want to. We're going to peg long-term inflation at 3%. Now, we all know it's been substantially higher than that recently, but the powers that be tell us that their long-term goal is to have inflation down to 2.1%. But, of course, they tell us all sorts of things, and so we've been using 3% lately just to be a little conservative.
Alright, so using 3% for inflation is a really great number. Basically, this is around your long-term inflation number. So if you go on the Bank of Canada website, it actually shows you how much inflation's been since 1914, and that's 3.06%, so very close to that 3% number. Now, when he talks about 2.1%, this is from FP Canada. Basically, this is just a guideline here, and you can kind of see everyone's favorite Benjamin Felix is helping write this paper, so maybe you can trust a 2.1% number, maybe from here on out. This is what most financial planning softwares are actually using. This is probably like your startup number. Now your YMPE, 3.1%, I'm actually using a 3.06%. What the Bank of Canada is showing you, I'm using, in my opinion, a more accurate number. Like this plus 1% is just kind of a weird random choice in my opinion.
We're also going to assume that all of Joey and Zoe's investments will be held in a balanced portfolio. Now, we're going with balanced portfolios not because I think they're particularly awesome, but just because they happen to be particularly popular out there in the big wide world. And in the software we use, the current built-in rate of return for a balanced portfolio is 5.22%.
Alright, so a balanced portfolio is what you call a 60-40 portfolio. Basically, this is like your classic retirement portfolio, which probably 90% of Canadians are using right now, maybe even people around the world. Basically, this just seems to be an industry staple. So I've been inputting the numbers as the video's been going on, if you haven't noticed, and we're going to start using 5.22% as the returns.
So that's what we'll run with. Now, I just want to sidebar here for a quick second because I think it's important and it should be noted that we see a ton of situations, and it is obscenely common for us to see statements that show a long-term rate of return that is far less than this for balanced portfolios. It's pretty bad, actually. There are a lot of firms in this country that charge way too much and have long-term track records of totally subpar returns. A lot. And if you're in that kind of situation and you have given them plenty of time but they still cannot hold their own, then just leave them. You do not have to stay where you are. It is really important to know that you do have options, so do not settle.
Alright, so now that that sales pitch is over, let's take a look at Well-Built Wealth. What are you offering Canadians? So it looks to be a fee-for-service advice. Basically, he's just looking at the financial planning aspects of your life. When you work with a financial advisor at a bank or maybe a brokerage, like they're taking care of both aspects, your retirement advice and your investment advice. So really, he's only doing half the job. And in my opinion, this person should be the same person, or at least they need to be talking to each other. Like, your financial plan doesn't work if your investment returns don't match your plan. And basically, I just think all these plans are garbage. Why? Because your returns aren't going to always hit that 5.22%. Like, my calculator is a dynamic calculator, so you update your returns, it's going to tell you how much to pull out that year. Basically, if your investments grow more than they should, it's going to tell you to pull out a little bit more. If the stock market crashes, it's going to tell you to pull out a little bit less, just like you want, right? Basically, what the calculator is doing at all times is always helping you spread out your tax evenly throughout your life. This is how you pay the least amount of income tax over your lifetime. If you're solely focused on minimizing your tax this year, basically you're going to maximize the tax over your lifetime. That bill on your deathbed is going to be a crazy number. So what are we charging for a plan? $2,900. Basically, since you're only doing half the job and a financial advisor, their fee on the side, your average is 1%. Basically, what this is saying is you should probably have $600,000 to talk to this person to kind of break even with the bank's advice. If you're a couple, you need to have $700,000. Basically, this is not a cheap service whatsoever. And all it's using is the same financial planning software I used to that cost me $50 a month. And guess what? The one I made is easier and better. This is why I left the industry. Alright, enough of my sales pitch, back to the video.
Joey and Zoe's portfolio is made up of the following. Zoe has an RRSP worth $350,000 and a TFSA worth $100,000. Now, Joey has always deeply admired Zoe, so he just copied her. And now he has the exact same amounts in the exact same accounts. And in addition to those, they have a joint non-registered account sitting at $100,000 for a grand total of $1 million.
So when punching in the numbers for your non-registered investments, these are taxable, we need to know the capital gains. So basically, we also need to know the book value. You really need to put in, how much I bought it for in the past and how much it's worth now, and trigger a bit of tax as time goes on.
Joey and Zoe also own a home with no mortgage, and it is worth an additional $1 million. Now, you might already be thinking, well, you can't include that because now they're retiring with more than $1 million, and I get it. And so, to begin, and for the bulk of this planning session, we're not going to include the value of the home. We'll just consider it a backup asset, okay? Because many people plan that way anyway. But also, lots of people do have the idea of downsizing at some point in the future. So we are also just going to take a peek a little later on at what it might look like if they did downsize, just for the fun of it. Now, on to pensions. Let's assume that neither of them have any work pensions, but they do have Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security. Now, since Old Age Security is based purely off of how long you've lived in Canada, and both Joey and Zoe have lived here forever, then both of them are eligible for 100% of the possible benefit when they turn 65. CPP, on the other hand, is based on contributions that you made over your working career. Now, some people end up with the maximum amount that you could get out of CPP, but most people end up with less than the maximum for a variety of different reasons. So in this case study, we're going to give each of them 70% of the maximum possible amount. Oh, and we'll start off with each of them taking both CPP and OAS at the normal start time of age 65.
Alright, so let's quickly talk about CPP and OAS. Basically, I have a number in here that starts you off with $1,471.66. Now, why is that number there? Basically, I'm just using information that's been provided by the government. I'm using the number what the average Canadian actually gets paid out. We're not drawing a 70% number out of a hat. Basically, you can actually look up this information. Like, you want to put the exact numbers that you're getting in the calculator. The more accurate your numbers are, the more accurate the advice it's going to spit out is going to be. So when we look at CPP, it actually shows you right here in April of 2024, it's paying out $816.52. If we look at the OAS number right now, it's $718.33. Like, basically, this is around $1,500. Like, I'm going to update the calculator after this video to the exact same two numbers I just showed you. Like, this increases little by little, and it's a number I'm going to update every January. But make sure you put in your numbers. Like, the calculator is accurate as long as you put in your numbers.
Last but not least, monthly income. Joey and Zoe are expecting that as they age, they're probably going to spend less and less. And so they're cool with building that idea into their plan. In the go-go phase, from age 65 to 75, they want to be able to spend $8,000 each month. And yes, we're talking after tax, money in the jeans, $8,000. In their slow-go phase, from age 75 to 85, they think they could get away with $6,500 a month and that would easily do the trick and still give them some wiggle room, so we go with that. And they're okay with dropping it a bit more for their no-go phase from age 85 to 90, but they also know that they may need additional care during this period, so they don't want to go too low. So they settle on dropping it by another $500 to $6,000 a month.
Alright, so why is he doing this? As you get older, you're probably going to spend less money, but this seems a little complicated. Why? You need financial planning software to do this. This is just the way he's figured out how to make a plan. Now that seems a little complicated, right? Like, how many years do you pick the go-go? How many years do you pick the no-go? Like, it's really just a complicated strategy. How about we just slowly pull out a little bit less as time goes on? So I'm going to show you this on my calculator quickly. Now I want to quickly point out inflation here at 3%. And if you remember that 3.06%, this chart's going to make a lot more sense. So you can see here, we're starting off the first year with 3,200. Now if you click the chart here, you can kind of see this is why he's doing a staggered plan. So what this chart is here is this is you adjusting for that 3% every year. You're giving yourself a 3% raise every year to accommodate for inflation. And basically what this number is down here, this is your inflation adjusted returns. Meaning, basically you're paying yourself the same amount of money in today's dollars throughout your entire retirement. So what he's doing is, chopping out here, and basically it's just going to stagger your graph down. Why is he picking certain amount of years and certain dollar amounts? It's so the plan works. This is how you fidget around with things. But as you can see, this is kind of complicated. How about we just make a smooth arc going down? Doesn't that make a lot of sense? Paying you the most amount of money in your first year of retirement. Let's celebrate a little bit. So I'll show you how to use that in the calculator in just a sec. Now quickly what he's talking about now, this is basically a tool made by the people who invented the product. Basically it's a sales tactic. If you're short of your retirement, either A, you're going to hopefully convince the client to either save more money, maybe risk their money a little bit, maybe delay their retirement. That's how you make these plans work, if you make it 100%. What my calculator does is say, hey, let's just tell you what's 100% no matter what. And if that's not enough, you just have to save more money, delay your retirement, increase the risk of your investments. Like, basically, this is the only thing you can do. You just have to pick which strategy you're more comfortable with.
This percentage wheel simply indicates how on track someone is for being able to meet their retirement income goals. And it's using all the resources they have available to give them income. such as their investments and their pensions. But it doesn't include the value of their house because they can't spend that value. They can't access it for income unless they were to sell it later or downsize it. Anyway, if it's below 100%, well, we got some work to do. If it's above 100%, then we've got some buffer. And these bars down here represent each year of life to come and how much income is wanted in each of those years. You'll notice how these bars are getting taller as they go along, and that's because we have factored in inflation. Each year the income need is growing by 3% to keep up with the relentless inflation. You'll also notice that these bars drop in a couple of spots. And that's because this is where the spending decreases for the slow go and the no-go phases that we built in. And each color in the bars is showing us where the income is coming from. Right now, you can see that in year 1, Joey and Zoe still have employment income. And that makes sense because they haven't quite retired yet. In year 2, you can see that there is now income coming in from CPP, OAS, and their TFSAs. The other colors that you see here in future years represent income from their non-registered and RRSP/RIF accounts. And lastly, this little circle here is giving us a running tab of what the expected estate value will be in the end when they pass away. So it's great for that, but it's also a really quick and easy way to see the impact of different decisions as we make them in the software, because each decision will either add to or take away from the value of their net worth at death. But back to Joey and Zoe. They don't like being shy of their goal, but they also really don't want to reduce their retirement spending goal if they don't have to. So we jump into planning. First of all, I don't like the idea of drawing down all of their TFSAs early on in retirement. Sure, it would make for some really low tax years early on since they wouldn't pay any tax on withdrawals from their TFSAs. But it also eliminates the flexibility of having all of that tax-free money later on when it may be needed. Plus, it just pushes off the taxable forms of income and usually just compounds the tax problem for later. So our first alteration is going to be to turn their RRSPs into RIFs right away so that they can start drawing out of their taxable RIF accounts earlier rather than later. This tends to smooth out the tax rates throughout retirement and lower the overall tax bill.
Alright, so again, what he just explained was, hey, let's spread out the money, and that's what the calculator's doing. It's telling you exactly how much to pull out every month out of each account based on the returns you're getting. Like, if these returns are higher, the tax-free savings account, it's going to withdraw a little bit more money out of it. Why? Because your money's growing. You can just take more out.
Next, we discussed the idea of delaying their CPP and their OAS from age 65 to age 70. Because you can get an extra 42% out of CPP and an extra 36% out of OAS if you choose to do this.
So this is great advice. Basically, every Canadian should probably take their CPP at age 70, including OAS. Basically, I will not make a financial plan for someone under the age of 85. And if you live that long, taking your CPP at the latest amount possible will pay you the most over your lifetime. Yes, you're going to miss out on that money from 65 to 70. You have to pull money out of your RSPs, just like bridging a pension if you're lucky enough to have one of those. Basically, it's just pulling money out of your investments for 5 years to make sure you get paid more for longer. And the best part about that is if you live longer than your financial plan, your OAS and CPP don't run away. They actually adjust for inflation as well.
Anyway, Joey and Zoe talk it over, and since there's quite a bit more bang for buck in delaying CPP, they choose to delay that one, but not OAS. So we go with that. And now we're up another 3%.
See, it's not much.
You can see in the bar graph that CPP is now starting in 2030 and has grown to become quite a sizable chunk of their overall income at that point. In fact, at this stage, CPP and OAS are making up around half of their combined income, which is kind of nice since both of these are guaranteed as much as anything can be, and they're both indexed to grow with inflation. This adds some serious stability to their situation later in life since investment portfolios can be volatile. and are usually not guaranteed or indexed. Now they might be more profitable, but the guarantees are nice to have too. Next, I want to tweak which accounts we are drawing from and when we're drawing from them, just to tighten things up a bit. You'll notice that now we're pushing TFSAs off until later, and we're focusing on drawing down the RIFs and non-registered accounts first. And as you can see, this adds another 1% to the solve rate. Then just one final tweak to optimize. This does little for the solve rate during retirement, but it does add a little extra juice to the estate value. And now we're very close, very. But then Joey, because he's a sharp cat, comes up with an idea. And he says, hey, since we're not going to be touching our TFSAs for a really long time now, why don't we try to get a bit more growth out of them? So we do it. We beef them up. And we change them from a balanced portfolio.
So this is you changing from a 60-40 to an 80-20. Basically, this is great advice to put a higher risk investment in your tax-free. Basically, it's just going to grow a little better. This is called asset location.
Growing at 5.22% to a growth portfolio growing at 5.62%, which is a pretty conservative estimate of the rate of return for a growth portfolio, but we're sticking with the built-in rates of return that the software uses, which are a bit more on the conservative side, just to be safe.
Yeah, just use your performance, like I said earlier. Like, none of this guesswork,
100%.
just use your performance, or else your plan's not going to work.
Or is it? We have no buffer here.
Alright, so let's show you exactly how to use RetireCan quickly. Basically, these are the same numbers that he was using. You know, I don't quite know the CPP OAS numbers, but you can see here what my calculator's outputting is very similar to what he's showing you. So basically, what I want to show you here now is this is where the calculator really has its power. So if we use the 2.1% inflation number, just like Financial Planning Canada, if you click this, it creates your retirement income stream. You can kind of see it's paying you a little more money now, like after tax. Why? It's still using the same amount of money that you have. So when you look at the graph this time, you can see, hey, I'm pulling a little bit of money out here, slowly but surely. But when you look at the inflation adjusted number, basically, since inflation is 3%, but you're only adjusting for 2.1, you can see you're slowly just decreasing your money as time goes on. So you're getting about $3,500 after tax for one person, like at the start of your retirement. About looks like to see about $2,800 by the time you pass away. Now basically you can tinker around with the percentages as much as you want to really create your withdrawal stream, but you can't really change the inflation after, set it and forget it. That's the one you're going to choose. Now the calculator saves it for you every time, but I just want to show you quickly, what does a 1% inflation adjustment, what does it look like? So make sure you click the province that you live in every time. It's got to say, hey, here's the new plan. Okay, now let's take a look. See how the bars are going up a little less? But at the start of your retirement, you're seeing around $3,700. But in today's dollars, you're only having about $2,000 by the time you're 90. So a 2.1% inflation number, the more I look at it, is really good. Now, when I talk to financial planners, financial advisors, I would say the average person uses a 2% inflation number. And they also use a life expectancy of 90. Now you can change these to however you like, but make sure you keep them constant. Now going back to the non-registered money, basically you should have a book value. So let's say this person has a book value of $30,000 and this is growing at 5.22%. What this is saying is, you should trigger $237 in capital gains every month. If you're actually withdrawing this money as well as an income, you're going to want to pull out about $600. Now, this is the trickiest thing. If you own 30 stocks, it's going to be tough to kind of add all these up together here and there, and that's when it gets tricky. Basically, it's just in your best interest to slowly trigger your capital gains so they're not left on your deathbed. So hopefully everyone understands kind of how the calculator works, and with these new graphs you can see really adjust your income and see what it's actually doing behind the scenes. This is no different than any retirement planning software that financial advisors are using. I just made it available to the public. There doesn't need to be a middleman. Financial advisors don't need to be a thing anymore.